rebalancing toward Asia and China in particular. Canada must respond to this fundamental shift. As the senior voice of Canada's business community, the CCCE has a key role to play in helping Canada take better advantage of the many potentially rewarding opportunities in Asia.
Well, they were the Wild Wednesday gang. Now they're the Terrible Tuesday trio. These are our MPs. You know them, of course. James Rajat for the Conservative Party and Chair of the Finance Committee, Deputy NDP Leader Megan Leslie of Halifax, Roger Cuzner, Cape Breton. I guess that's your only title. Yeah, good enough. You are an MP. Okay, moving right on. You heard Jim Flaherty. There's a whole conference that's been dealing with China trade, how much we should do. I'm wondering, do we have a coherent China trade policy, Megan? Does the government seem to be showing that? I know what you're going to say, but...
Well, I don't think we do. And we see these little pieces coming out from different MPs and ministers, MPs saying, what are we doing about human rights in China? Then ministers saying we need to increase trade with China. Then no government action on this Nexon deal. But what we have is a situation with the country, we want to absolutely open up markets for Canada. We want to increase trade partnerships with countries like China, especially emerging markets like China. But at the same time, we do have concerns about human rights, about labor rights, about environmental standards. So why wouldn't we stop and think about how to put a plan together to make sure that this happens? Why wouldn't we think about what we're doing here with China exactly?
What are you getting out of this, Roger? I mean, we talk about free trade with Europe, yet the free trade deal in China seems to have been put on slowdown mode.
I think there's two things with the Chinese file and Chinese trade file. We've lost a whack of time here. You know, Prime Minister Chrétien had taken the provinces back years ago over on Team Canada missions and opened up dialogue with them at the time and opened up some opportunity. And when Mr. Harper came in, whether it was because it was a Liberal initiative or whatever it might have been, you know, that went by the wayside. Or once the states said that we're not too fussy about Alberta oil, that's really what got his attention, and he started looking toward China. So, you know, whatever it was that motivated, but it's important that we're engaged on this file.
Better late than never, James?
No, in fact, I mean, we've been on a very aggressive trade file since 2006, signing a number of different trade agreements with different countries, and then expanding trade with countries like China, like India, that are very much, in fact, emerged economies and have very high growth rates. And obviously, we can do an awful lot of trade with them. So we are very much expanding trade. On the Nexon file, Minister Parody is obviously looking at that specific deal in terms of the net benefit test to Canada, as he would with any agreement of that size. But we are very much expanding trade with the whole Asia-Pacific region, building on things like the Asia-Pacific Gateway Initiative as well. So,
but the problem, I was just going to say, the problem with the kind of trade approach that this government is taking is it's about shipping our raw natural resources over versus how do we look at creating value-added, high-paying jobs here in Canada? Why aren't we creating the kinds of products that an emerging economy like China needs? I mean, our manufacturing sector is all but collapsed under this government. Why aren't we looking at how we trade the value-added goods with them and really get the benefit of that?
But in fact, the last report of the manufacturing sector showed it's done very well considering a lot of the challenges they faced, and in fact have formed some real ties with our natural resource sector to add value to those natural resources.
I was going to ask you quickly, because you're near the oil patch or near the nearest the oil sands of anyone on this panel. India, I read a story this morning. India is actually buying a $5 billion stake in the oil sands, but no one seems to be screaming about that. What's the diff?
Well, I think people obviously, if you look at India, I mean, very comparative political system, obviously both members of the Commonwealth, so a strong tradition and history there. But you raise a good point, Don, because there's been an awful lot of investment from France, from obviously Shell, from Netherlands, from other countries in the oil sands, which we want to welcome and which we should obviously look at as well.
Or is it a state-owned company in India?
I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
I think it is.
In fact, if you look, I mean, outside of North America, most energy producers of that size are state-owned enterprises.
Sorry, I segued into that. I just threw it out because it crossed my small little mind, and I thought I might as well do it. All right, moving on to something else. Angus Reid. I want to talk about this Angus Reid poll. And I don't like doing polls because the polls don't really matter. We're three years away, but I always find these kind of interesting because they sort of show trends in how public is thinking. And this one showed, it was talking about the annual ranking of the best and worst prime ministers of the last 40 years. There's good news and bad news for Stephen Harper. He's rated second best prime minister in the last 40 years behind Pierre Trudeau. But he's also ranked the worst by 25% of Canadians, which is up quite a bit from last year. Roger Kuzner, what does this say about Stephen Harper?
Is he a polarizing figure?
I guess that's what it tells me. You love him or loathe him.
And I would say yes, but of course, I'm a terrorist-loving radical environmentalist who stands with the child pornographers.
Apparently so.
He's never met a wedge that he didn't want to drive, and I think that's what we've seen over the tenure, and with the majority government certainly it's even. Well, I'm saying the majority. I shouldn't even have to qualify it. That's the way he's done business, and it's been successful for him.
It's worked. Why do you quibble with tactics that work? Divide and conquer. Isn't that what the whole political game's all about, Megan?
Perhaps that's what the political game's about for the Conservatives right now. Divide and conquer, absolutely. It's not going to work for them in the long run. I mean, Canadians are seeing through this. One thing I think that poll about Harper, I think, is also true about the Conservatives, because the two are almost the same thing in the minds of most Canadians, and the Conservatives have created it that way, right? One man and he's it. So they are trying to divide and conquer, and I really think that Canadians are fed up with that kind of divisive politics.
You get the feeling, James, it wouldn't take much for Stephen Harper to be a little nicer, and people would see him less black and white, harsh division.
Yeah, but I do find it a little funny. I mean, we talk about divide and conquer and wedge. I mean, Roger and I have been here for 12 years. I mean, of course, I never saw Paul Martin or Jean Chrétien do any wedge politics in their time at all. But I mean, obviously, being the Prime Minister, I mean, as you mentioned, he's the second most favored since 1968. But obviously, if you make decisions, you are going to have people that are, not that pleased with any decision you make, regardless of how you and what decision you make. But in terms of being Prime Minister, I mean, Roger actually knows him on a personal level. I mean, the Prime Minister's been out coaching hockey with us and actually seen how good Roger's son, and he does that on a very personal level.
He's a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's a very nice guy. He's always
What's the next topic?
He's always coming up and hugging me.
What's the next topic?
Okay, you want to move along? Okay, sorry, I want to go. Canada, 5 years away from his 150th birthday. There's a committee that's come out and said, hey, come on, guys, we don't want to wait this till 6 months before the 150th. We want to do something special. And I'm just curious if you think we should be doing something special, or we're in a time of austerity where we do a few TV commercials like we did in the War of 1812, and that's all we do at 150. Roger.
Well, maybe it'll be a time to, they want to celebrate the distance from the Commonwealth. Maybe they can exercise a little bit of that distance rather than jumping in bed with the Brits more. But I guess it'll be good for the gazebo industry. And so, yeah, let's have a party.
Tony Clement, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was coming out. All right. Megan, party or no party?
I think we absolutely should do something special to celebrate. And with the NDP government at the front, we'll certainly be organizing something.
That'll be after the next election. Waste of money?
Yeah, Don, obviously we should have a huge celebration of our 150th anniversary. And the committee, I think, should be recognized for their work, and the government will obviously respond to that. But yeah, we should celebrate that to the greatest extent possible.
I got to ask you a quick question. You were tweeting in the House of Commons today that you thought the government was handling this opposition motion the worst possible way.
It was brutal.
Give us a quick synopsis of the motion and why you think the government did so badly.
Like they were citing stats from comparing Liberal stats from 1993 and our record in 1993, and when we inherited the mess from Mulroney sort of thing, 1996, those types of stats. And then they get up and they love to beat us up about, you voted against this, you voted against this. I mean, they come forward with an omnibus bill, 480 pages with it, they lump everything into, and sure, there may be a rose in that bouquet of thorns. There may be one good program, but yes, we voted against it because it's egregious the way that they do business.
You want the working income tax benefit increases to the national child benefit. These were in very specific pieces of legislation.
A couple of little roses, maybe
in fact, building on some of the initiatives that were put in place by former
government. But you can't vote to get rid of inequality, and you can't vote to talk to the provinces. I mean, that's what the Conservatives, they refuse to say, yeah, we'll talk to people.
We talk to the provinces all the time. I mean, I was back in my riding this weekend talking to the provincial government.
You're going to vote against these motions today, though.
Okay, your bells are ringing for you guys.